This video will show you how to use elastic shirring thread to create regular and 3D shirring effects. This 3D effect looks a lot like shibori work. And this regular shirring is very useful for cuffs, collars and general suppression of fabric. In order to do shirring, we need to take the bobbin that normally goes inside the bobbin case. So we're working with a regular bobbin case. And then I have this shirring elastic. So shirring elastic is designed to go on the bobbin and be used in the bobbin case of the machine. So just holding it on the edge of the bobbin case and winding with no additional tension. So not too loose, not too tight. It's important to wind up and down the bobbin as if I had made a regular bobbin using thread. That will give me more even tension as I am stitching. Okay, so I think that is quite full. So I need to make sure that the elastic can fit through the section of the bobbin case here and end up comfortably where the thread would normally come out. Okay, so to put the elastic through the ordinary part of the bobbin case, okay, so that's coming out reasonably happily. I may need to adjust the tension screw here to make sure that it comes out a little bit more freely. Now, so I'm just going to loosen that screw a little bit. Shirring tends to work best on lightweight fabrics rather than heavyweight fabrics. So I've got this piece of silk organza and I'm working in a black thread and a dark navy black shirring elastic in the bobbin. So I've set the stitch length on the machine to A3, so stitching on normal stitch length and then stitching on the edge of the fabric. First of all, I'm going to demonstrate some basic rows. So again, hanging onto the thread and the elastic at the back. It's a good idea to leave a little bit because we're going to tie them off at the end. So leave enough free elastic at the back. Okay, so shirring normally works best if you put a few rows of it together if you're working on the straight. So the fabric has a reasonable amount of stretch, although it hasn't gathered too tightly yet. I'm just gently stretching out the fabric here where it has previously been elasticated so that I can see the row and that I can stitch parallel to it. Work in even numbers of rows as we will be tying the elastics and the threads off in pairs at the end. These are the two finished edges of this piece of silk organza. So on this side here I worked with a stitch size 3, which is a middle size stitch length, and that has given quite a nice secure, tight, professional looking finish. On the other side, I experimented with a stitch length 5 just to see if it would give better ruching. And you can see on this side, the stitches are all a little bit loose looking. So the end result is not as professional. But just looking at finishing off the loose ends. What we need to do with the elastics in particular is to tie them off. An overhand knot where you take two elastics, wrap them around your finger and pull the two loose ends through the wrap. Okay, and sometimes using something to help pull them down to the base. So if I just use this screwdriver, it means that the knot doesn't tie until I pull it right down to where I want it to be, and then I can remove this tool at the last second and pulling the knot right down to the base. So now these two pieces of elastic are tied to each other and can't escape into the fabric anymore. So I need to do the same on the other side with the threads. So taking these two threads here, I can either tie an overhand knot, or in this case, because they're threads, they're less elastic, they're less likely to spring back into the garment. I'm just going to tie a reef knot. So taking the right thread and the left thread. So to tie a reef knot, I'm going to go right thread behind left and tie it down, and then left thread behind right and tying that down. Okay, so that is a reef knot that shouldn't come loose. At this point now we can trim some of these excess lengths a little bit shorter. Tie off the remaining loose threads and elastics in the same way. So that would be a very nice way maybe to finish off a sleeve. It tends to look quite a lot like a smocking when finished, so it's quite a nice finish, and again it's quite comfortable to wear because of the elasticity that it has. Okay, for this next sample I've got a reasonably large piece of silk organza, and I'm going to use a hoop, and if I stitch in a circle I'm expecting the remaining fabric to stick up, and placing the hoop around and tightening it. Now, so I've just placed a wooden hoop in underneath the free machine embroidery foot. This is a number 24 Bernina foot. So dropping the foot down, so I need to hold the elastic and the thread down at the back while I'm getting started. Okay, so now I don't need to hold it quite so firmly, so holding the hoop steady. I've stopped exactly where I started so I can tie the two elastics to each other at the back. So just removing the hoop. And the end result is, I suppose, a circle rather than a point. But I think that the technique has been quite successful there, and the stitches do look a little bit loose. But if I'm working with the free machine foot, really I would just need to stitch a little bit faster to make the stitches not quite so large. So I'll see if I can do that with the next one. Okay, so I've just hooped as close as I could get to the first piece that I've done. And I think this time round I will try to do a slightly smaller circle shape and see what effect that has. So I've done this much smaller this time, and I've done a lot more elasticated lines, so we'll see what happens when I take it out. Okay, so I think probably the little pointed effect is a little bit more defined on it because of all of the stitching leading through to the little bubble section in the middle. For this third experiment, I'm going to stitch around and around in the same place to see if the elastic effect becomes tighter. Okay, so I think I've just run out of elastic, but I think this was enough to test out the technique. Okay, so just taking it out of the hoop. This is the third experiment here. I think because I've gone over the elastic in the same area, it probably has the most successful Shibori-like bubble of all three. So I'm going to work with this one here, which was the last piece that I did. I've got the two threads on the surface of the work here. Now they're both coming out in different places, so I'm going to sew them individually through to the back of the work so that they will match up with where the elastics are. So threading the hand sewing needle and then bringing this back to the other side of the work from where it currently is. Okay, so that should meet up quite neatly with the elastic, and then doing the same with the other piece. Okay, so this is the reverse of the work. Here I have a piece of elastic, and I'm going to tie the two off using a reef knot. So right behind left and tying a simple knot, tying it down, and then left behind right and tying it down. And if I'm nervous that that may not hold, I can double it over again. So right behind left and left behind right. Okay, and I would for security leave some elastic hanging here, and I do think that the hanging elastic and thread could actually look quite nice. If I do want to take it down a little bit neater, I'll probably leave about this much hanging on the inside. And these are the three final experiments. This is the very small one where I did the spiral effect. This was the first one with the very large circle, giving quite a large bubble up at the top. And this was the third experiment here, which was repeating the same lines round and round. And they do give this really quite nice raised 3D effect.